Welcome to Midlife Matters. I'm Marie, and each week I'm joined by my friends Julie and Mindy to talk about all the topics keeping women in the middle years up at night. This week we're talking about embracing the empty nest. Most of the time this stage is associated with fear or sadness, but today we've got a story that will fill you with hope. Whether it's a new home, new career, new adventures, or even a new pet, entering the empty nest can be a time to live out a new set of dreams. Let's get started. Hi, Mindy.
Hey, Marie.
Hi, Julie.
Hello, Marie.
It's good to see you guys today.
Yeah, it's good to be back.
Yeah, great to see you.
Today we're kind of taking it back to our roots of Midlife Matters. You know, one of the reasons we started Midlife Matters was to explore all the aspects of midlife, especially with our kids starting to leave. We all have kids that have left the nest and are in various stages outside of our homes. We also have kids that still live in the home, but we kind of wanted to start to explore, well, what goes on after your kids have left? And today we're talking about the empty nest. And the idea of our kids leaving and being alone in the house with just our husband looms before many women. What do you guys think about when you think about that? How about you, Mindy?
It feels like it's so far away. At the same time, gosh, like it's exciting and scary.
Yeah.
And I think I have no idea what that's like. I mean, Bryce and I certainly got married without children, and we didn't have children for 3 years, but I don't remember hardly what that was like because we've been defined by mom and dad for such a long time. I can't imagine when we're not defined by that every day.
Right. Julie, what do you think about, and you're almost to a completely empty nest. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I am experiencing it a little bit, but I noticed the last time John and I were on a trip by ourselves, I thought, oh, this is fun. This really is like it was before we had kids. I could remember that feeling. But then when we were back home, that's a little different story.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah. Something about being outside of your normal environment takes you back to those memories more easily.
Yeah, being at home, we need a little work.
Uh-huh. Well, I think that just the name empty nest connotates a sense of loss that many women fear, and we want to maybe bring some hope to the subject today. We have a friend joining us who's going to talk about her empty nest experience. Lisa Lentz is a program director for Preston Ministries, an after-school mentoring program for underprivileged, at-risk youth. But she's also in the midst of an empty nest, and so she's here to share her experiences. Lisa, welcome to Midlife Matters.
Thank you. So glad to be here. Good to see everybody.
We're excited to have you. And why don't we just start out with you telling our listeners a little bit about yourself, how long you've been married, your children, etc.
We've been married. We met October 10th, 1987. So we're 31 years. I'm trying to do the math. 32 years we've been together. And we have 3 children, 24, 25, and 26.
Okay.
And all doing their own thing.
Yeah. So you have young 20s and you've been an empty nester for a few years now. So you have some wisdom to share.
Let's hope. Let's hope. That's hope.
She always does.
We've been doing this empty nest thing for a couple of years now. I think when my last graduated college, and she lived with us for maybe 3 months and then moved out on her own. So it's been a couple of years of empty nesting. So,
Mm-hmm.
And I guess those college years too, you see them periodically on the holidays and whatnot. But yeah, that 4 years of college certainly was a big part of that transition too, right?
Right.
Yeah.
That's kind of your first taste of what's it going to be like.
Right. Yes.
Feels like
Yeah.
part-time right now. Part-time empty nest maybe with one of mine.
Lisa and I met, we were just talking about this. I think it was in 2006. I was at a homeschool tutorial and the director came to me and said, hey, we have a new family moving in and they have a son, your son's age. We were kind of low on boys Andrew's age. So I was very excited to meet her. Our boys became fast friends, and so therefore we did too. Lisa is just a great friend to have on your side. She's so positive and encouraging. She's a natural teacher. And I've said that after being with Lisa, you start to believe that you can do things you didn't think you could do.
Oh, wow. did you work outside the home while you were raising your family?
Yeah, we had 3 under 3.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so I was working full time outside the home. It was in the Virginia, DC, Maryland area. And I was working with at-risk populations there. They were adults in urban poor environments, a lot of travel. So when my oldest turned 5 is when we decided that we were going to bring me home full time and homeschool. And so we made that transition. I had to make that transition of what my identity looked like as a homeschool mom from someone who had traveled and been in the world. Yeah, it was a big transition. And the Lord really, he was very close during those years and really sloughing off what wasn't important and homeschooling through those years, and then moved to Nashville, Tennessee.
Okay.
And that's how I met Julie, getting involved in a homeschool tutorial and meeting that new circle, that new community here in Nashville.
Wow. I love your background. You've got like quite a few experiences to pull from. I love you talking about that identity change too. That's huge. That could be a whole nother podcast, but we'll focus on leading up to the empty nest for today.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, especially since you homeschooled, it sounds like really the majority of the time your children were at home. Were you nervous or unsure or excited thinking about the time when your kids would leave the house?
Oh, yeah. I think it was a daunting, fearful, a grieving process, knowing when my first was going to leave. In fact, Julie and I kind of went through that almost together. It was a grieving process. I mean, it really just felt like just loss of that piece of my world. He had gone to public high school, and so my role had changed a little bit with him, but just wasn't sure how the dynamic of the household would work, right? With this person gone.
Did it get any easier each child you launched outside of the home? Can you give me a little hope? I'm about to launch my second child. My first child leaving felt like losing a limb.
It definitely got easier. I think, God was so good to work on my heart and prepare me for it. And I really thought it was going to be harder because my last was my daughter.
Okay.
And I homeschooled her through graduation, but it got easier. She was ready and I was ready.
Well, I do think that it gets a little bit easier as each one goes because our fear of the unknown is answered a little bit. Like we know, they will call, they will visit, they will still need us. That first one, we don't know.
That's true.
So Lisa, tell us a little bit how you got involved in what you're doing now and when that happened. Was it while your kids were leaving or did you wait until they were all gone?
When my last was a senior in homeschooling senior, I was the director of the tutorial, the 7th through 12th grade program. And I loved that experience, pouring back into this circle of women and helping families graduate their kids and help them to transition on. And I knew that last year that it was coming to a close. So I just started really listening to my heart and the Lord and, just thinking, what are my passions? What are my dreams? What did I lay aside for a little while in knowing that I would pick it back up? And I often talk with new moms about that. There will be a season when you're going to pick this back up. The passion doesn't go away, right? Mm-hmm. I knew that I wanted to still work with children and families and be a part of their education and sort of their growth. I knew that I wanted to go back to working with under-resourced populations. And so that is kind of what started my search for, this is still on my heart. And there's still a desire and passion there. And I knew that I wanted to go back to work. Some out of desire, some out of necessity. We were going to have 3 kids in college. Mm-hmm. That's kind of what got me into searching for organizations that do that, and found Preston Ministries and worked part-time. I used to run a homeschool tutorial in the mornings and then go in the afternoons and run an after-school program.
Now tell us about your physical move that is associated with your job?
We raised our kids in Franklin, Tennessee, and really we bought that house to serve raising middle schoolers and high schoolers. So I was getting in the car, commuting down to downtown West Nashville, and I'm coming back up to Franklin, and it's an after-school program. So I didn't leave there till 6, and I wouldn't, dinner wouldn't be on the table till 7:15, 7:30, and so married life got very compressed in that time. And then it became field trips on the weekends, community suppers that we would do at night. So I just felt like I was leaving this house to go live life and then come back. And we weren't really living life in the house. We were together, and we were, we were keeping the house and the yard and the, everything so everyone could come home during those college years. But as my youngest was graduating, I thought, this house isn't serving our marriage. The things that we want to do and ways in which we want to spend time and money. I came to Charlton with the idea of moving closer to the families we serve. He was very open to that. He and I are both kind of a bloom where we're planted kind of people. And so we did have to kind of let go of that. Our kids aren't going to bring their kids to this house and just work through that. And the three of them had the spectrum of reactions to that, right? Okay. Some were very, very supportive. Live your married best years together as a married couple in the way that suits you. And others were, I guess I just thought we'd blah, 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 and had to, and I had to honor all of that, right? Honor helping them to work through that. So we started looking at different places, and I have a dining room table that I homeschooled my kids on. And it's a very long dining room table. And as we were looking at houses, none of the ones that we were going to buy would fit the dining room table. And I said, you can have every stick of furniture in this house except this dining room table. It's coming with me. It's the thing, right? You see their names in the, from practicing their spelling words. I mean, it's all on that table. And so a friend of mine said, at Preston Taylor, we have a mentor who's a lunch buddy who builds houses in West Nashville. Why don't you give him a call? So I did. I called him and said, that dining room table has to come with me. So he called me.
A house for our dining room table.
Yes, we really did. So he called me on Mother's Day. I remember this very specifically. He called me on Mother's Day, and he said, we just built this house in the West Nashville area. I really like the way it's turned out. It's a nice square house. And I've been thinking about your dining room table. And I think that your table would fit in this house. We just bought a lot in the Nations area. I think we're going to build this house again on this lot. Do you want to go down and look at the house we just built and see if you like it? And I was like, yeah, okay. So, and my mom was in town. And so it was Mother's Day. So I got to pick what we did that day. And I was like, yeah, let's go look at that house. And so I asked him, I said, Mark, where is the lot? And he said, well, it's on the corner of blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. He said, do you know that area? And I said, is St. Luke's Community House across the street? And he goes, yeah, do you know that building? And I said, we just signed a contract with St. Luke's Community House. It's one of our new sites, and I'm the new director.
Oh, that's so awesome.
In April. And that kind of stuff it just does not happen to me, right?
You can stand in the community center, and she pointed and said, there's my house. You can see it down the street.
I can see the office from my bed. Not great. I need to buy different curtains. But
right. You need a home work life balance there.
Right. But Mark was like, we've got to get you in the neighborhood. We've got to get you in the neighborhood. And so he really worked with me. And so that was Mother's Day. And by Memorial Day, we had a contract on that house.
Awesome.
So that's just a contract not only on that house, but on the house that we wanted to sell in Temple Hills.
That is super.
So I thought, okay. That's the Lord at work. There's no way I could orchestrate all that.
We're all in now.
We're all in now, right? No turning back.
Yes. All right. Well, I know that you prepared a lot for your kids to leave, and you kind of went through a little bit of a grieving process beforehand and, kind of thinking about what your dreams and what you wanted to do. But how did you and your husband actually feel when the empty nest truly happened? Like when your daughter moved her furniture out of your house and you knew, okay, now it's here.
He was way more ready than I was. I mean, his he kept saying, honey, it's like dating with cash. We can
That makes
can
sense.
actually do stuff now, right?
I understand that mentality.
So, but I really had to undo a lot. We really parented well. We made a great tag team, but I really started to learn that he did not want to be parented by me. And I know, right? I just, a helper suitable, right? We had some stops and starts, and, just working in the recovery community and understanding just 12-step work, we decided to do couples counseling. It was his idea. I just remember going, okay, I'm going to support him in this. He wants to, to do this. I don't know why, but, it really helped to uncover some things for me. Just, that my issues with one, codependency, I learned one, that I can use other people to make myself feel something. I would lean on him, to elicit something. For me, I also learned that love equaled approval. And so I didn't have those boxes being checked as a mom, really, or as a homeschool mom. And so I was sort of shifting that need to him.
Okay.
And I think lastly, just my other definition of codependency is doing for others what they are perfectly capable of doing for themselves, albeit not willing, and just staying in my lane and being in acceptance of where things were. And he didn't need a teacher. He didn't need me to homeschool him, right? That was a very redefining process for me.
Did you feel like most of the work was on your end? What was the work on his end? I'm not hearing.
I know, right? You need to invite him, and he needs to talk about that.
But you both had issues then.
Yes, we did. And one of the things we learned is that we tended to lean out. And what that means is a problem or something comes upon us, and we're going to lean out. I want to make sure that I'm in this whole, complete person who's got it all together. And then he approves of that and shows me love and affection because of it. And so I had a real hard time being vulnerable with him. And he tended to do the same thing. And so we really needed to practice being vulnerable to each other. We needed to practice being good listeners for each other. And we needed to practice what it meant to put the marriage first. Whatever the fallout of that was, we would do. And it was awkward. It was uncomfortable trying to do these new things and trying to communicate in these ways. But it made such a difference. In Revelations, it talks about the different churches, and one of the churches being the Church of Ephesus, and learning how to come back to your first love. And that's what it felt like to me, that it was this taking steps backwards and going, what was it? And coming back to our first love.
I just think that is such wisdom for you to say. And I'm so thankful you're saying it, because we enter marriage, and pretty much most people go through marriage counseling with planning to get married, preparing to get married. You go through this marriage counseling, but you're hitting this whole new phase. And it sounds like, you kind of come back and you almost have to get to know each other in a sense again.
Yeah, because one of the things that I came to realize, those high school years and those college years taught me a lot about myself, but it also taught him a lot. And I wasn't giving him credit for that, if that makes any sense.
It does.
I needed to meet him
where
he was at, right? And have this new appreciation for this man and how he's grown and how he's still cute, so cute, and still funny. But also so wise, right?
Yeah.
Well, Lisa, let me ask you this. You mentioned earlier that he was kind of excited for the empty nest, whereas you were grieving. Did he understand your grief, and how did you coexist while you were grieving?
He understood that it was there, right? I don't think he could even connect. Julie, you connected with it more than he could, really, but it wasn't his vocation, right? He didn't He didn't lose his job.
Good point. Yeah.
Oh,
Right.
man.
Yeah. He
Yeah,
didn't,
you're right.
I didn't get fired. I got laid off.
That's the best.
But he was as understanding as
a man can be.
A man can be. Thank you.
I was waiting for somebody to say that.
We've talked to other working women on the podcast that said that, they thought maybe it wouldn't be as hard for them to go through that because they worked. And they thought, well, that's not my whole identity. But it doesn't matter whether you worked or not, which is comforting for me to learn.
Right.
You are still going to go through that grief process because they shared that they went through that grief process too. I just think that women grieve their children leaving more than men do.
Yeah. I would agree with that. And there was a double-edged sword there too, because I had to figure out, am I really good enough for the workplace again?
Mm-hmm.
Is what I've done going to prove valuable? So there was that whole piece of it too. Right.
Yeah.
The insecurities of that. And I will say he was very supportive of that because he thinks I'm just amazing. So he just was my cheerleader in that process, which was so comforting.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Even after the kids have left and we've made adjustments, I know that I have struggled with my expectations of what family life would look like in this next phase. I know that expectations get me into trouble a lot. I think I set myself up for disappointment. It's not that the people are disappointing, it's my expectations. And I think our expectations come from the way we did things, the way we grew up. And I just, I lived close to my family and I kind of thought that that's kind of how my life would be. And I thought I'd be going to church with my kids and having Sunday lunches, family lunches, and babysitting kids on Friday night, because that's how it was in my life. Yeah. And so that's been hard for me to adjust to, feeling like I'm missing out on those years. I know you don't have grandkids yet, and I know your kids all live away. So how have you dealt with that?
Well, let me just say this. My parents moved overseas while I was in college. They moved to Tokyo, Japan. And I actually have sisters. I am a twin and I have twin sisters that are 16 or 18 years younger than me. And so when my parents told me that they were going to go live in Japan for 4 years, I dropped out of college and said, I'm going with you. Because I just didn't want to miss those grown-up years with my sisters. I lived in Japan for 6 months, worked for IBM, and then would go back to Ohio. So it took me 7 years to get through college. And so my first job was an art agent in Columbus, Ohio, and I owned my own business. I was building a network there. My parents lived there. That was going to be my world, my environment, my career, and it was going to grow and grow and grow and grow and grow. I connected with an old friend that I'd lost touch with when I moved overseas, and I went down to Alabama to visit her, and she set me up on a blind date that I didn't know I was going on, and it was with Charlton. It's an instant connection, and there was that decision to close down my business and be moved to Alabama. And so my mom did an amazing work of being very intentional with being a part of my kids' lives. She would come for long, sustained visits. Charlton was very supportive of that while my dad was working. One time she came just before Thanksgiving and pretty much off and on left Memorial Day weekend.
Oh, wow.
And oh, wow. He was, and that's why I say it. He would come home and there's my mom playing mahjong or Scrabble, and there's a lasagna in the oven. What husband? It was like, what husband would love that?
Yeah.
Or it's not the love, right?
Right.
Yeah, he was. And she was also very respectful of our time together. But because that was the way my mom did it, I think that's kind of how I was expecting to do it. I will say this. I really thought one of my kids was just going to love Nashville and stay in Nashville. And I think it was my daughter. I really thought, because she's in the event planning world and in the nonprofit world. And I was like, Nashville's perfect for you, right? But she's in Chattanooga. It's, she just wanted to be out of Nashville.
All right. So watch out, Lent's children. Mama's going to be coming for a few months each year.
And, I kind of slipped that in, you remember when your nanny, was there and, we just kept going to the thrift store and buying her a new season of clothes.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah. Well, I do think that in this age, travel is easier and less expensive than it used to be. I think people feel more comfortable with it. So probably just that generational thing will be a little bit different too. Like you might not need to stay for such a long period of time because you don't mind going back and forth.
Right.
Yeah.
And FaceTime and Skype and
Right.
you know that really checks some boxes for me. When I'm driving to Celebrate Recovery and my son's driving a volleyball, my oldest, and we have a Thursday phone date. If I put the earphones in my ear, you know, it just feels like he's right. You know, he's right there. I can you can hear behind the voice.
Sure.
You know?
Right.
And so that kind of checks some boxes for me too.
Yeah.
Having technology.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, what advice do you have for women getting ready to enter or already in this phase? Like, I know that you've shared your experiences, but if you had someone come to you and say, you know what, I'm coming up on this in a few years, what are some things that you would share with her?
You know, one of the things is call me.
Okay.
Because you're going to need a friend. When I say do what needs to be done to put the marriage first, I mean that in every aspect. When we downsized, we have a 3-bedroom home. It's 14 or 1,500 square feet. I can't remember. And we made one room a guest room. We were going to make 2 rooms guest rooms. We talked about it and we realized if we did that, we would only have 1 living room. And so we decided to not put a bed in there and to make that a rec room, yoga studio, mandolin, you know, second living room, depending on who's coming when. We have our kids stay in the house, but this past Thanksgiving, we rented an Airbnb.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and they enjoyed that. They got to have their own space. They were on the cool side of West Nashville. We're still in the hood. But by putting the marriage first and having that space so that we could use it as a married couple, there's a consequence to that, right? That I mean, if they want to all fit in the house, they can, but not the way it would have been had we kept our house in Franklin and they could all sleep in their own rooms. And, you know, we said that. We said, hey, by doing this, we can actually afford to travel more and, you know, get Airbnbs. And, you know, we said that. And so doing that, you know, I do have to query them just to say, hey, did that work out? But they seem to really enjoy it. Their lifestyle is very different than this, right? You know, we're lights are out by 9:30 at our house, and they're not in that Airbnb. So things like that, right?
Yeah.
Just how do you put the marriage first? When the kids moved out, I got some living room furniture that I absolutely loved. It was this low, white, cream colored couch and love seat. And I just absolutely loved it. And it was big enough that, you know, a kid could sleep on it, you know, if they came home from college. But this was going to be our adult furniture. And then when we put it in the new house, Charlton never said anything, but it just wasn't working for our marriage. We had kind of have this main living room that we would sit and eat together and then watch TV together. And he just would prop all these pillows up, and he wasn't comfortable on this couch.
Right.
And after, you know, watching a little bit of our, you know, National Geographic documentary or whatever it is we're watching, he'd say, you want to move upstairs? And so that became a habit. And finally I said, let's go pick out another couch. And he was like, you know, because it wasn't working for the house and for the marriage and for what that time together that we wanted to be. So when I say put the marriage first, I even mean over the furniture, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and that's just like what we had to do when we had kids, too. We didn't get to have the furniture that we wanted because we had kids, and now we don't get to have the furniture that we want because we have a husband.
Well, it sounds like she's prioritized, though. She got the dining room table, but she had to kind of compromise on the couch.
I did get the fluffy white rug and I got the fluffy white dog. So he compromised on some, he didn't want another dog. And I just really enjoy having a dog in our house, and he compromised. And
well, you know, I was thinking when you said that your husband didn't want to be parented, I was thinking to myself, well, then that's why you get a pet. Because I think women really feel that need to, in quotes, parent something, you know, take care of something, nurture something, and the pet fills that need.
I'm going to 100% agree with you. I worked with an organization, Crossroads Campus, and they have social work interns that work with you and match you with a dog.
Oh, wow.
They were bringing dogs over to Preston Ministries and doing dog therapy with our kids. I had just gone through the process of losing my mom, and I said to Charlton, every time they walked in with a dog, I just was like, can I take that dog home? Can I take that dog home? So I talked to Charlton about it. And he's like, I really want a dog that we can board or, that we want so that we can travel. And
Right.
They matched me with a dog. They knew me pretty well. And every week they would come, this is not the one. This is not the one.
Really? How fun.
And I know, it's so fun. And then one day they walked in and they were holding a dog. And I was like, yeah, that's not the one. And they said, we found your dog. And I was like,
really?
What? But she had a phone and she said, here it is. She's a white toy poodle.
Oh.
And so I get to, and she's a therapy dog. She comes to work with me and the kids, she doesn't bark. She doesn't lick. She's very calm and she doesn't mind being dressed and undressed and
how
bows
fun.
in her hair and hats
That's my
on.
kind of dog.
Exactly. She's like a little wind-up toy. And I do enjoy taking care of her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
It's
having a
therapy
dog
for me.
And having a dog in your house when you come home, who's something that's excited to see you, and that's kind of like having a kid at home.
It's a kid that doesn't talk back.
Right.
Now, if the dog could just stop going to the bathroom, sign me up.
If only we could potty train the dog as easily as we potty train kids.
It's true.
Yeah, well, that's awesome.
Okay, what advice do you have, if anything else, to strengthen marriages during this phase? I know that it's not uncommon to hear of people married 25, 30 years, and then one day they just kind of give up and throw in the towel and they're not married anymore. And that just seems so strange that they've made it this far, but then the empty nest hits and they go their separate ways.
Right. Well,
what can we do to prevent that?
One of the things we learned in counseling is this idea of part of my passion is loving what your passion is and being able to embrace, I'm going to love this because you love it. And so Charlton did that for me with hiking. If he had a choice, he'd go to the golf course on Saturday. I'd go to the woods with Julie and my other friends, and then we'd meet sometime later in the afternoon and talk about our experiences. And so he took on hiking for me. We trained together and we did an AT trip in North Carolina, Tennessee, the Tennessee Balds, and we did a trip together. It was just such a wonderful experience. And from that, at that trip is when we talked about our dream trip. And one of his was, he's always wanted to go to Spain since he took Spanish in high school. And my dream was to walk the El Camino, which is a pilgrimage in Spain. And so we decided to train for Spain. Mm-hmm. It took us 3 years. We trained 1 year and I tore my MCL and we couldn't go. I was training a second year and my mom was diagnosed. And then this year on the AT that Charlton said, no, we need to go home and buy the tickets. We need to do it. And so we did.
Oh, wow.
It was him taking that on, learning to love it because I loved it. Right. Mm-hmm. And the same is true with golf. I have tried so hard to love golf.
So many women do.
It just stresses me out to try to get that little white ball in that little round hole. But I am great at color commentary. I'm a great encourager. Mm-hmm. And being on the golf course is kind of like being on a hike. So I'm his caddy. I pull his clubs. We go golfing. As soon as he gets off of work, we try to walk 9 till it's dark. And, we have headlamps on. We go golfing over the summer and spring at 6:30 in the morning before church. Mm-hmm. We get in, we walk 9. Doesn't that sound so fun?
Bless you, woman.
And I have I'll stand behind him and I'm totally focused on where his ball's going. And I've got all my, oh, nice lie, honey. That dog will hunt, all my catchphrases seem to motivate him.
I love that.
The very catchphrases that I used to use when my son was playing baseball, right?
Right.
Not your pitch, not your, I would have, so now I'm doing it I'm doing it for him and we have a ball, I do not play golf.
You look really cute out there, right?
I do.
I was going to say,
have
there's lots of cute golf clothes.
That's
Yes.
the nice thing about it. You do get to wear the outfit.
So what I hear you saying is I need to get back on that sailboat out in the ocean.
Oh,
Really?
Julie.
I can't even believe you got off that sailboat. Absolutely.
It scares me to
It
death,
does.
Lisa.
I know.
It sounds like it takes some work for sure, like to think of what are my passions? What are your passions? What can we get
Right.
on board together? Because it is
Yeah.
so easy, like you said, for you to go do your thing
Right
Yeah.
now.
and him to go do his thing. And then you are meeting back later, but you're not experiencing anything together.
Exactly. And
Right.
that was our marriage. We did things well apart,
Mhm.
right? And had great dinners talking about it.
Right.
Right. You meet at a restaurant, you're sharing a glass of wine and you're talking about it.
Mhm.
I didn't want my marriage to be that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, Lisa, give us a look into your life now. Where do you see your life, your marriage growing and changing over the next 25 years?
Yeah. 25 is a long way away. I don't think I think that far along. I think in the next 5 for sure, continuing with the ministry work that I'm doing. I think probably in the next 5 years, I'm thinking I'll have daughters-in-laws and my sons-in-laws, maybe grandkids. And so we'll want to make that a priority for me and make some changes around my work life. We're leaving for New Zealand February 18th.
Oh, how
Oh,
exciting.
wow.
Yeah. So we're excited about that. And then, of course, Glacier in July, and then the Portugal route of the El Camino in October of 2021. So those are the sort of the things that we have on our radar. We know that we enjoy doing hard things together
Mhm.
and encouraging one another and discussing different ideas of how to solve issues and problems. And that's where my vulnerability comes out. I feel comfortable doing that. Don't know that we'll live in the house that we're living in. I think at some point we'll probably move farther out and more rural. I'm enjoying urban living right now, but that probably won't be us, in our later years.
Right. So it sounds like it's not the typical, I bought a house, when my kids left home and this is where I see myself until the day I die. Like you're open to change and new experiences.
Yeah, we knew that would be our 10 or 12 year house because it allowed us to do what we wanted to do in these next 10 or 12 years.
What a great attitude. That's really inspirational.
It is. Yeah.
But you're keeping the dining room table?
Yeah, somebody's gonna be inheriting that. Whether they want it or not.
Yeah. Well, this is really encouraging, I think, to everyone listening, just to hear somebody that's really enjoying the empty nest, because it's an unknown for us. It's just like when our first child left for college, we just don't know what it's going to be like. And it's so great to hear your experiences.
Thank you.
Yes. Thanks for
sharing
sharing with us.
Yeah.
Well, before we move on to our I'm a Fan, I know that you wanted to share a little bit for Nashville area people if they would like to volunteer at your ministry, and maybe just give a brief overview of exactly what your ministry is again.
Yes. So Preston Taylor Ministries is an after-school mentoring program for under-resourced youth in the 37209, 37208 zip code. 37208 zip code, it has the highest incarceration rate in the United States.
Wow.
And so we have a lot of families that, live with transition and live with emotional and physical abandonment, and Vietnamese families, Latino families, Black and Brown families that live in a myriad of issues. And so we have one building that we own. It was donated to us. And every other facility that we have an after-school program in is a building in the neighborhood, an existing footprint of partners who have made an investment in the neighborhood. And then we run after-school programming. We're their youth development arm of what they're trying to do. And so we have a program during spring break, the March 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th timeframe, I think, and 6th through 12th graders put in an application with us to do job shadow over those 4 days. Monday's a training day for them. They learn how to tie a tie, do interview, budgeting. We play the game of life, all that sort of thing. And then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, they job shadow.
Okay.
And so a sixth grader could do this every single year
Sure.
and then have this wealth of people and experiences and exposure, right?
Mhm.
And so we're always looking for any vocation, including homemaker,
Mhm.
to volunteer anywhere between 2 and 4 hours.
Mhm.
You would be matched, same sex, guys with guys, girls with girls, and explore that workplace environment. A lot of people, the first thing they do is, well, all I do is work on a computer, or all I do is, they have the all I do speech, but that's what we want them to see, but we want to see the phone work and the meetings and the computer work and how to send an email and why it's important to, that. We had one person last year that needed to strip a piece of furniture. And so she said, is that a thing? And I was like, absolutely, that's a thing,
Sure.
right? And she then could talk about interior design and her why this, making this old thing new. I mean, so it can be a myriad of things. So just go into the website, www.PrestonTaylorMinistries.org. It's a spring break in the marketplace. You'll see a tab where you can express interest.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. For those listeners in the Nashville area, if you're interested in participating, go to PrestonTaylorMinistries.org and sign up. Sometimes Steve and I have even talked about if we would have just known that such and such was a career option. A lot of times kids growing up, we only know what we've seen and what we've been exposed to. So this gives kids a chance to see and be exposed to more opportunities. That's great.
Exactly right. That's exactly right.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on to our I'm a fan section. And we always let our guests go first. And Lisa, I can't wait to see what you are loving in your life this week.
It's my bucket hat.
Ooh, that sounds interesting.
It has been so versatile. I got it for Spain. I love it because it's cool enough that it vents, but it also is great sun barrier. It's a great wind barrier. It's a great rain barrier. My hair looks really good in it.
Really?
And
it's kind of like the fisherman hat.
Yeah,
Yes.
but it's all about how you wear it.
Okay.
So it can fold down and it can fold up.
Awesome.
It can fold half and half. It's got a string that you can attach, under your chin.
I Googled bucket hat and there are a lot of articles on them, including do I need a bucket hat this summer? So
there you
listeners,
go.
Look it up.
Yeah.
All right, Julie, what are you a fan of this week?
Okay, I'm a fan of my new brush.
Really?
Hairbrush.
Is it a hairbrush?
Yeah.
Okay.
It is. Over Christmas, I somehow lost my round brush that I've used for 30 plus years. And so I was in Molly's bathroom and she had this paddle brush. So I had to use that. And I thought, this is never going to make my hair do what it's supposed to do. And it made it so smooth and silky and straight. She said she got it at Target. And I did find the Swissco, SWISSCO, soft touch paddle shower brush.
Oh.
And they're available on Amazon. And I love it.
Now, when you say shower brush, do you use it in the shower?
Well, the little bristles feel I don't use it in the shower, but I guess that means that the bristles kind of massage your scalp and it's safe to brush your hair with it wet. Because I don't think you're supposed to use a brush on wet hair, but this is okay. So I love it.
Right.
Oh, that's awesome. I just think that is so funny that you had the same brush for 30 years. And then how in the world do you lose it? Where does it go? You've been on a million different trips. Do you always bring it back home?
Yeah, I must have left it somewhere. So it forced me to change.
Yes, and to think that they have actually improved on the brush
and 30
technology in 30 years.
Wow.
All right, Mindy, what do you have for us this week?
I am a huge fan of my daughter's friends and church family. I know this is not a product or anything like that. But I've just been so full with knowing that my daughter that lives away, she's 11 hours away from us, that she has a family where she is, and they are the hands and feet of the Lord where I cannot be. Mm-hmm. And so it just fills me so much to know that she's taken care of, that her friends are speaking just wisdom and encouragement in her life. She's got friends that will just gather around and pray with her. And like the Lord is providing people for her. And so those people I'm a huge fan of.
Yeah, no, those are needed. And that's wonderful. And how great for your kids to see that happening too.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Well, I'm a fan of something that we got for Christmas. I think a few weeks ago I shared a fun game. We actually got 2 fun games for Christmas. So this is the second one. The first one was a little card game called Sushi Go. If you haven't heard that, you want to go back and listen. But the second one is Ticket to Ride. And actually, Ticket to Ride has been around a while. I see you guys nodding. Lisa, do you like that game?
Big fan.
Big
Yes.
fan? Lisa, Julie, I think you've told me that you like it too.
Yeah.
It's basically a board game where you have a bunch of trains and you're trying to build your way across America, but you can also get other countries like Ticket to Ride London and Europe. And it's really fun. At first, it's a little daunting, so I will give listeners a hint and say, watch a YouTube video on how to play. Because just looking at the instructions, I seriously considered sending it back to Amazon. I thought, there is no way I am ever going to learn to play this game. But watching the YouTube video made it much more understandable, and we've played it a lot now. And I can honestly say that all my kids have liked it from, age 24 to 15. They've all enjoyed it. So it's a great one. Ticket to Ride if you want a fun family game.
Yes, the YouTube is a great idea.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Lisa. We have enjoyed hearing from you. We love your enthusiasm for the empty nest. You guys sound like you maybe can write a book in a few years on how to survive it and how to do well.
Yes.
It's good to see you all again.
Yeah, great to see you.
Wisdom on this. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yes.
It was very fun.
And any Nashville listeners, make sure that you check out the Preston Taylor Ministries website and volunteer, especially over spring break, if you do any kind of job that you think kids would benefit from learning about.
Yep.
Yes.
That'd be awesome.
All right. Thank you, ladies. We'll see you next week.
That's
All
right.
right. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye. We're so happy you joined us today. If you'd like to get the show notes for today's episode, please email your name and address to midlifematterspodcast@gmail.com and write show notes in the subject line. Also, please tell a friend about the show and help them hit the free subscribe button on their favorite podcast app. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Midlife Matters Podcast. That's where we post pictures and stories about all the things we talk about in each episode. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.